in your book, throughout the book, आप बताते हो कि बहुत सारे drug raids वगैरह आपने capture करी हैं, where some of these are obviously like super illegal, but some of them are just people trying to make do with something that is legal, correct?
Yeah.
Even you mentioned कि आपके जो ये farmers थे जिनका वो 0.3% से ऊपर हो जाता है अगर cannabis, तो उनके farm जला देते हैं या raid कर देते हैं, what happens?
हाँ, ये होता है, वो फार्म जला देंगे, रेड कर देंगे. Honestly, 90% of these raids are just done by just to show कि हमने कुछ किया है. We've heard there's a drug menace, and this happens a lot, especially in Andhra, Odisha, where there's now that corridor has become the biggest producer of illicit ganja that goes around in India.
Yeah.
More than the Himachal Uttarakhand corridor. I will follow, my Google alerts about cannabis in India. हफ्ते में 2-3 बार आ जाएगा, like, X many acres have been burned by authorities. And these are still a small number considering how much ganja is actually growing in India. But they have to do it and publicize it to show कि हमने कुछ किया. We are fighting this war, and it's actually become the last 4 or 5 years, they have really taken this into overdrive. The Indian government announced that by 2047, our 100 years of independence, they want to make India 100% drug free, which is a very hilarious 3 words for me to hear. 100% 4 words, jo bhi hai, never going to happen. You cannot get a country drug free, because the meaning of drug could mean, because a pharmaceutical drug is a drug if I have too much.
Yeah.
If I'm having my cough syrup, my friends in school used to get completely high on cough syrup. That was the easy drug for them. अब वो cough syrup illegal हो गई है, Corex नाम था उसका. So similarly with ganja, like, I almost feel this is such a waste of potential to just go out and burn these things instead of actually seeing what we can do with it. But
yeah, definitions are a problem, because आप drugs के अंदर किस चीज को लेके आओगे, like you said, and we're not a Singapore. We're not a small island with a tightly governed one party system, and we have many borders. I hope they figure out Punjab, but it seems very challenging.
Yeah.
You've got drugs. If you talk about illegal drugs at dealer level quantities, you've got drugs coming in from that. You've got the Myanmar corridor, right? I'm sure like there's drugs coming in from our coast ports as well, probably.
Yes.
ऐसे तो बहुत मुश्किल है 2047 तक कर लेना. And then what do you do with the social progressive movements? You see what is happening now in the tier 1 cities. People have moved on from really cheap alcohol, from spirits to craft beers to wines and now cocktails. As the Indian consumers are also demanding a better and better high, let's just say, it seems practically impossible that conversation is not going to go to cannabis legalization.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you met like someone called, I think Hempwati. You met Hempwati?
Yes, Priya Mishra.
Yeah, Priya Mishra. She mentioned that her cancers or tuberculosis symptoms were massively healed.
Yes.
If you want to watch small segments of the podcast, subscribe to Toscast Clips. After using medicinal cannabis, how can you deny that lobby? That's a very big lobby of people who will actually be benefited from using cannabis.
I think the conversation around this is like the fact to have something like drug free, and when I mean drugs, I mean, we're talking specifically, let's talk about ganja, let's stick with that. I think we're going about it the wrong way, because what you're doing is that you're actually taking away something that could be has a lot more nuance.
It could be a $10 million industry. Just be a capitalist and think about it like that.
There's a lot more nuance to this, and I mean the model I use in my book in India where it's working. So Sikkim has its own proposition of an NDPS Act. It's called the SADA Act, the Sikkim Anti-Drug something, and they don't look at drug users. And we're talking about we're not talking about people who have large amounts to sell it. We're talking about users who are caught with a few joints. They or even harder drug users, like people who use brown sugar and all. They don't look at them as criminals. They look at them as people who need help. They look at them as victims, and they help rehabilitate them, and they help. So it's like it's a very sort of positive way of looking at change. And what they've actually done is that they have seen the numbers of addicts really go down since the SADA was implemented in Sikkim. And I feel that, again, the SADA is not a perfect thing, nothing is. But I feel we need a little bit more creativity in the NDPS Act to deal with this ganja quote unquote problem, because it is everywhere in India. It is the number one illicit substance used in India, unless you count alcohol, wherever you count it.
Yeah.
It's in cities like Bombay, it is the number one thing under the NDPS Act, which people are arrested in.
Yeah.
And it's for holding a little bit of weed here and there. because of we talked about the Andhra Odisha border, right? Andhra Odisha regions. Because there's such a huge mafia there of ganja growth, the central jail in Visakhapatnam, and I spent a lot of time in Vizag for this project. It's filled with over 80% transporters, people who they were not the growers, they're not the mafia, they're not the users, they're just like poor people who need the money to transport the drug from point A to point B. I'm not saying what they're doing is not a crime. It is a crime. But at the same time, like, I feel that we are not going after the right, we're not solving the right problem here. We are trying to get the numbers. We're trying to say we arrested X amount of people. It's not actually bringing the consumption of the drugs, and the worst part of it, which is you mentioned, the unregulated consumption of the drug, it's not helping that at all.